Ms. Williams is present on the phone. At this time, I would like to recognize Pastor Brooks, who will kindly lead us in prayer, and Alderman Powell, who will also lead us in the pledge of allegiance. Please rise.
Let us all bow. Gracious Heavenly Father, truly we come before Thee with a sincere heart. Thank You for another day's journey. Father, we thank You for this blessed opportunity to be able to call upon Your holy name in this setting. And Father, we ask that You will please be in the presence tonight, and the business that need to be taken care of, it will be done decently in order. We ask blessing upon this mayor, this board of aldermen, this city and its residents, and all that make up Gluckstadt. We just thank You in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor Brooks, thank you as always. Alderman Powell, thank you as well. At this time, I would like to recognize Chief Hale.
Yes, sir. I thought maybe
You need more?
I thought maybe I was.
You getting the floor for a few minutes.
Mayor of the board, at this time, I would like to recognize our officer of the quarter, one of Gluckstadt's finest, Officer Joseph Mullen. He, since January the 1st, he's been very proactive. He's made 24 arrests, 10 felony arrests, and 14 misdemeanor, and wrote 40 citations. So he's going to be actually our first officer of the quarter. This is a new plaque. We're going to hang it up somewhere, especially in the police department. We got you a little certificate and a gift card donated from the Betty, the Fuel Time, Small Cakes, and I got one more over here. Yeah. And a $100 gift card from Guns and Gear. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yep.
You want me over there?
What's the next one? Come on, here.
I can get it out. No, I don't want it.
You want to get in the picture?
Yes.
I can.
Yes.
Even if you don't like it.
Well,
Improve the picture side.
congratulations. Thank you. Hi, Mr. Buckner.
Mayor, next I'd like to introduce Sarah and Jan that can Keep Mississippi Beautiful. They're gonna kind of help us explain the Keep Mississippi Beautiful, what they do, see if we can get Gluckstadt involved with Keep Mississippi Beautiful. They're a sub-part of Keep America Beautiful, and they do a lot of beautification processes, things considered around the cities that they do that are a part of their organization. I'd like to have them come up and kind of explain. If you're okay.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mayor and Alderman, and congratulations to Officer Mullins. We work with a lot of enforcement officers across the states with 60 affiliates that we have with Keep Mississippi Beautiful. And we're here tonight with Chris's invitation that I think you maybe forgot about us coming, but we're glad to be here, and we just want to give you some information. We would love to see the city of Gluckstadt to become our 61st affiliate in the state. All your neighboring communities, Ridgeland. Jan is the director for Keep Bridgeland Beautiful. I'm the executive director of Keep Mississippi Beautiful. We have Keep Madison, the city beautiful. We have Keep Jackson beautiful. We have Keep Holmes County beautiful. So you're surrounded with affiliates all around. And we would love to see the city of Gladstone become an affiliate as well. There is a process. We're going to leave you a training manual. I've got some brochures here that I will give you. This is not an easy process, but we like it that way because we get the best of the best in communities involved. So I welcome the opportunity to work with you as a whole and the citizens and the community. It is usually led by a volunteer group of organized citizens in your community. So, Jan, do you want to say anything about Keep Bridgeland Beautiful? And I will tell you that Mike McCollum is a dear friend of mine, and I know he was a great friend of all of yours as well. And Mike was one of the ones that spearheaded Keep Bridgeland Beautiful. So, I think that speaks highly of itself. Are there any questions for us?
Any questions? So what do we need to do to?
I have given Chris an application, and that application would need to be filled out and signed by a mayor. There is a fee, with your population, it'd be $1,500, and your annual fee would probably be around $100 per year.
Okay. All right.
And it
We'll work on
usually
getting that
takes,
to you.
a community, it can take them anywhere from, we don't dictate the length of time of the training, but we would have the first training would need to last about 3 hours, with your committee that's chosen. And then after that, you'll be given homework to be done. And then after that, we would come back with a second training, and that training you would be certified at that time.
Okay, great. We'll, get that application
Okay.
completed and back to you, and we'll get some committee formed and be in touch with you.
Thank you. I look forward to
Okay.
working with you.
Thank you both. All right, and at this time, I'm going to move to item 4, the consent agenda. You all received today some slight modifications to the consent agenda. Given those modifications, I would ask for approval of the consent agenda as amended. Mr. Slade made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Taylor seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Ms. Williams, did you vote in favor?
Yes, sir, in favor, thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am. All right, item number 5 has to do with our monthly budget reports and our monthly bank reconciliations. All of that information really is an FYI. You can all read and see the status of those. I did want to make a comment. At the beginning of this fiscal year, I asked each of our department heads to work with me on trying to save some money over the course of the year. In actuality, what I asked them to do was to cut each of their budgets as proposed by 10%. It was this week that we met with all the department heads to have a discussion, since it's halfway through the fiscal year, as to kind of where they all were. And I was very impressed and satisfied that I think that we are going to be able to spend no more than 90% of our budget this year, which will demonstrate our fiscal responsibility and to try to cut our budget, keep our budget under control in a time when, our national economy is not necessarily the best. So I'm very encouraged that as of halfway through the fiscal year, we're going to come in 10% less than what was appropriated for our budget. And all of our department heads deserve a lot of recognition for that, and a lot of praise and support for what they've been trying to do. So I want to thank them all for what they're doing. Absent any questions about that or any of the items in the budget report or the bank reconciliations, I'll move on to item number 6. Okay, Ms. Ruth. Is Ms. Ruth here? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Ruth, we're on item number 6.
Good evening. Let's talk about, first item, which is going to be Homeland Security Grant. This is the $150,000 that has to be modified twice. I'm asking approval from the board to purchase all equipment and commodities and pay invoices upon delivery.
Okay, any questions of Ms. Ruth about that? All right, is there a motion then to approve the Homeland Security Grant and the purchase of those items?
Make the motion, sir.
Mr. Powell made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Bates seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I have Ms. Williams as aye in support.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There is you should have gotten a, spreadsheet on closed, open, and applied for grants. I don't know if anyone has looked it over, if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Williams. Can you hear Ms. Ruth? Okay.
Hi, Ms. Ruth.
Hi.
Can you tell me on the column that indicated that a walking trails, I believe, has been postponed to the next fiscal year? Is that the January fiscal year next year or starting our new fiscal year?
That would be the next fiscal year, and I believe they're on the same calendar we are. So
Okay.
this would be the RFP that came out in January of this year. Instead, we're going to apply for the one that comes out in January of next year. And it's just because we're not ready.
Okay, thank you.
That's the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks grant, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions of Ms. Ruth? Ms. Ruth, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Slay.
I know most of our grants have been for police department, I guess a couple on here for the park. Are there any, I've never seen any grants, but are there any grants available for like our street maintenance group or equipment, anything like that?
I've never seen one, and I have looked. I've never seen one at grants.gov, which is a clearinghouse for all federal grants. That would almost have to be a local state money grant, whether it be MDEQ, or maybe state EPA. I wouldn't think that NEMA or FEMA would have anything along those lines.
Okay. Well, I was just curious. I assume y'all were probably looking for, those sorts of funds, but I want to make sure.
You know, Ms. Ruth and I had a discussion today about grants for street repair, those types of things. And, we've applied for a grant for the Gluckstadt Road widening project. And really and truly, the engineers who've helped us with that, as well as Mr. Buckner,
Yeah, that'd be Stan.
have really worked, Stantec, that's right.
He's back here.
And so a lot of those grants are handled sort of like that by Stantec, and they work with Mr. Buckner.
Of course, if they need language written, then they come.
Right.
Most of them come through CMPDD, the NPO, and stuff like that.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Any other questions? Ms. Ruth, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
All right, item 7A, we have a change order. Chief Hale?
Yes, sir. On the first change orders for, both of the orders for the police department, on the first one, we're making some changes to the evidence room and the evidence room and the armory. We're making changes to that, and then we're adding, they said we have to have window steel to go around the windows. So we had to make those changes.
For the evidence room?
Well, that's for the front of the building.
Okay.
Which is, all the changes are actually in our, owner's contingent or amount, so this is not nothing new that we're having to approve to spend. We already have it, you're just getting approval from y'all to make the changes.
So the money's already been budgeted for in the project?
Yes, sir. I think we had $70,000 for the owner contingency, and we may got something like 40 or 50 left after these changes. So I had changes there.
Okay, great. Any questions about change order number 2A? All right, is there a motion to approve change order 2A?
Well, that was,
Second.
I'm sorry.
that was A and B, I just did.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna take them one at a time.
Yes, sir.
All right, so 7A is change order 2A. And Mr. Slade, did you make a motion?
I move.
Okay, Mr. Slade made a motion. I'm sorry if you did. I volunteered you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Powell seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next item is change order 2B. Is there a motion for approval of change order 2B?
I move.
Mr. Slade made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Bates seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ms. Williams, I am recording you as an aye.
Okay,
Okay? And look, I have not heard you, Ms. Williams. I want to make sure that I record your vote appropriately. So if you're against anything, please let me know, okay?
yes, sir, will.
Okay. All right, item 7C is change order number 3. Is there a motion to approve it?
Make the motion, sir.
Mr. Powell made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Slade seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that takes care of item 7. Next, item 8A concerns Freeport and industrial tax exemptions. Alderman Slade.
Put it on page 237. I think everybody remembers 2 years ago, 2022, we approved certain tax exemptions that the Board of Supervisors had approved, and the tax assessor asked us to basically, if we wanted to reapprove those. We were operating on a real short time frame. It was a pretty rushed decision. And we weren't given a lot of good information. About the only thing we were given at the time was the taxpayer's name, I think the asset class and expiration. We weren't given the assessed value or the taxes on those assets that the exemption had been approved on. I know since then, me and Ms. Bates have had several conversations about this. She's done some work on it. And it kind of came to, I guess, a head in our last audit. The auditor put a footnote in our audit that we had approved the tax exemptions in 2022 of $667,000. When I saw that figure, it kind of jumped out at me, and I said, wait a minute, we need an accounting, a breakdown of this. So I say we, me and Ms. Bates, Ms. Kellum, and Mr. Maul have all kind of jointly been working on this, trying to figure it out and get all our answers, all the questions answered. We've had 2 meetings with the tax assessor, and they have given us quite a bit of information. First question we have the tax assessor was a breakdown, 237, with a breakdown of the 667,000. And where the auditor got that figure from, there was an email that a lady in the tax assessor's office had sent to us, where she was estimating the tax exemptions in 2022 of 667. So that's where he picked up that and showed it in his audit. If you go to page 237 I'll eventually get to it. In the package, it is. I'm getting it on mine. That if you look at page 237, down at the bottom, you'll see a total of 667,000. Now that's the total exemptions that were approved by us. Now this is the 2021 tax roll. Taxes in arrears, and that was the most current information they had at the time. But I want to call, I guess, special attention to that section in yellow. Of the 667,000 total tax exemptions, 481,000 were Freeport exemptions. The other 186 were what the tax assessor calls industrial exemptions. Industrial are real estate and like fixtures, equipment, maybe additional buildings, things of that nature. But you can see that by far for most of the tax exemption, the 667, most of that was in Freeport warehouse exemptions, 481,000. And if you look at that a little bit closer, you see the breakdown of it. Actually, there are two shown in there that aren't inside city. And I brought those to the attention of the tax assessor's office, and they haven't been removed, but they said they were aware of it. One was Nissan and one of them was Primo's. Now, Primo's is not our local retail store. That was their warehouse over in Florida. But anyway, there are two primary businesses that get most of the Freeport warehouse exemptions, and that's Cardinal Health and Levi Strauss. And in 2021, and that's the form you're looking at there now, Cardinal Health was 281,000, Levi was 129. So 410,000 of the tax exemptions were those two businesses. Okay. When I saw this, I started thinking about, okay, that was 2 years ago. Where are we now? If you go to page 238, the next page, this is an update on just the Freeport warehouse exemptions. This is from the 23 tax roll, which again is the most current information they have. You'll notice there that roughly 637,000. Now, this list does not include two businesses that we approved Freeport warehouse exemptions for last year. That's Hunter Engineering and Sanhui International. I went back and looked at those when we approved them. Those two were 56,000 total. But if you'll look at the 637,000 there, you'll see that the same two businesses, Cardinal Health and Levi, comprise most of those tax exemptions. Cardinal Health is 252,000, Levi is 293,000. Now, if you add Hunter and Sanhui to that, we have, in effect, total Freeport warehouse exemptions, 693,000. For last year. Now, in addition to that, go to the next page, actually page 241. Page 241 has the industrial exemptions. Again, that's your real estate and your basically equipment, additions or whatever. That's about 175 now. So if you add the Freeport warehouse exemptions, 693, the industrial exemptions about 175, you come up with total exemptions of 868,000. And of that, trying to remember, of that, Cardinal Health and Levi is 546,000. So the vast majority of warehouse exemptions, again, are those two entities. Again, we got total exemptions last year of 868, and Cardinal Health and Levi comprised 546,000 of that. Now, in our meetings with the tax assessor, we asked them, how do we compare with the other municipalities around here? I know Canton has approved a lot of exemptions. I asked them specifically about Richmond and Madison. They said to their knowledge, neither Richmond nor Madison had approved any tax exemptions. And, they said, I think it was Madison, they didn't think even accepted applications for tax exemptions. Now, you know, it's hard for me to believe that some of the development and new businesses and everything that have been built there, that they didn't approve any tax exemptions, but that's what we were told. Now, the reason I'm bringing this to the board, I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention, how much we actually have, how much we have approved, and that that figure has grown a couple $100,000 since we originally approved it 2 years ago. It's increased from 667 to 868, a little over 200,000. You know, some of these businesses, and let's take Cardinal Health and Levi as examples. You know, those businesses employ a lot of people. You know, when you think about these industries and what they mean to the city, you have to think beyond just what the tax exemptions that business is paying. These businesses are paying a lot in taxes over and above this, because they still have valuable real estate. I'm sure a lot of equipment, everything they're paying taxes on. But, you know, going forward, if we have to approve a tax exemption, I think you almost have to look at it on a case by case basis. And you gotta factor in things like employees that work there. What kind of income does the city derive from those people? Do they live here? You know, how much money do they spend in the city? So there are a lot of different things you've got to take into consideration. But the point I'm making to the board is I want the board to realize how much money we have approved tax exemptions, and going forward, how we want to look at this and things we want to look at. Okay. Anybody have any questions about it?
Great job getting your hands around this.
Anything you want to add?
No, if you covered it all. Yeah.
Great job to get your hands around it. It's been an elusive, project, I know. Thank you for taking the lead on that. And it's a lot for us all to think about and consider. So thank you for doing that.
Question,
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Slay, are you of the mindset that as we consider these, each time they come up for the request, that you said case by case basis, are you of the mindset to apply complete millage or give a discount on millage, or only filter that out at that time? Or are you landing on either side, or no millage at all? Or do you even want to share that?
Well, I'll discuss it, but obviously that's a full board decision. You know, what I would want to look at is the complete entity and what it means to the city. Now, I think you've got to think about, again, the number of employees they have, the payroll, what kind of income that generates for the city. And then, you know, in addition to these tax exemptions, I mean, these businesses are paying taxes. I mean, you still got to look at the real estate, inventory, fixtures, or whatever that they are paying taxes on. So I think if a business were to come to us requesting a tax exemption, personally, and I'm only speaking to one board member, what I would want to look at are the total assets that entity owns that are subject to being taxed. Then look at what the tax exemption they're requesting, and then see what kind of net taxes that we're going to require the business to pay. I think you got to kind of look at the gross exemptions and then look at the net. Some of these businesses, it may be we charge them full millage. Some of them, it may be maybe a reduced amount. You know, a question I had for Mr. Scanlon, I guess this is a legal question. For example, I know we've got some of these businesses are paying ad valorem taxes on 1-2% of the inventory. You know, if we look at that and say, you know, that's just not enough. They need to be paying tax. We need to generate X number of dollars from this business. We provide fire protection, police protection. We're having to maintain the streets. Should they be paying taxes on 10% of that inventory?
I don't know if we have that option, if we can do that or not.
Well, so I guess our office was looking at it more from the statute that requires it to be done upon application. There's some opinions out there. Zach has actually done most of the research on this, so I wanted to chime in. But one of the questions that we were looking at was whether or not they had properly applied. You know, it was a request that was forwarded to the city by Norm Kennedy from the county tax office. And, you know, there's opinions out there that say that the statutes have to be strictly complied with. And then we were also trying to see if there was a cap, you know, on how much time, how many years you could grant these things. The Freeport exemptions, I think, say a year on that were granted by the city. I don't think we put a time frame on the others. The statute says it's, you know, the time frame, whatever the board may prescribe to it. So, you know, there hasn't been a time frame prescribed to it yet. Whether or not, you know, you can go back now and prescribe a time frame to a tax exemption that you previously granted is something that the law that we're looking at is kind of silent to. So that's the kind of thing you potentially could seek an AG's opinion on. As far as the amount, exactly, you looked into the amount, well, Mr. Slay's asking about the different percentages, because I thought most of that was kind of statutorily and also, you know, discretion of the board.
Yeah, the percentage wise, for the Freeports, for instance, you can only tax the inventory that stays in the state, but anything that goes out of state that's just transferred, you know, it's a quick stop here and then it goes to a different state somewhere. That's what's not being taxed. The inventory that goes out of state is not taxed, but the inventory that stays in state is taxed. But the Hunter, I know for the Hunter and the San Juan, we capped them at a year. We put a year time frame on it. But the ones that were approved when the county just presented them to us, I don't think that those had been prescribed any kind of end date or expiration date. And so that's what we were trying to look at, is if we could now prescribe them, you know, put an expiration date on those that have already been approved that the county presented to us.
Okay. One question you mentioned, are we limited as to charging taxes on just the inventory that's sold in Mississippi?
The Freeport exemption?
Freeport warehouse, yeah.
For the Freeports, yes. Anything that goes, that's just being sent out of state, or anything that's shipped out of the state that's just temporarily stored in the warehouse for a certain period of time, that's what the exemption is for.
Okay.
So the stuff, any inventory that they have that stays in state and is shipped from Gluckstadt to Oxford or DeSoto or somewhere else in the state is taxed. It's only for the stuff that goes outside of the state that's not taxed.
I thought the Freeport warehouse exemption had to be approved by the city, but the only thing we're approving is exemption on that portion that's sold in the state. Then that's all.
The exemptions for stuff that goes out of state, in state is still taxed at the normal 12 million.
Yeah, but what you're saying, we can't tax inventory that's shipped out of state though?
Not if they're given the Freeport exemption.
If we approve the exemption.
If the exemption is not approved, then all the inventory would be taxed just like it normally was, 12 million.
Okay. One of the questions when we were looking at this with the tax assessor, or the lady in the tax assessor's office, you know, the assets they consider industrial, the real estate and the fixtures and so forth, you know, those have a 10-year expiration. And
It's up to, yeah, that's right, yes, sir.
What was left open in the information they gave us on the Freeport warehouse exemptions, they didn't show an expiration date on any of those. So I asked them, I said, well, what about those? They said, we really don't know. We thought they were indefinite. I said, oh, wait a minute, indefinite.
The statute just says it's for as long as the governing authority may prescribe. So there's no cap on it like there is for the new industry or expanded industry exemptions.
So we're the governing body.
Yes, sir.
So it's what we prescribe.
It just hasn't been prescribed by the board yet when the approval was granted. So, you know, that's the question that we were sort of examining was, can you go in now and prescribe a time limit? I mean, I don't see a prohibition against that in the law, but you haven't prescribed a time limit yet. And it's discretionary grant of authority by the statute, you know, what the board, the governing authorities may prescribe. But as I say, if you're uncertain on that, you know, we can always seek the Attorney General's opinion. Of course, that's a 6-month or longer process. But we don't see a prohibition against it, but it's not, we can't find anything that directly addresses it on point. But that's one thing that I think you can look at it as your time limit on it.
These businesses that have, and this, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 of them, I guess, of course, Cardinal and Levi being by far the largest. If the board decided we want to require them to come in and apply to the city,
We have a process in place now.
can we go ahead, can the board approve that and give them a deadline? But we've got to give them a
The
deadline.
ones that you've already granted, is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
So, I mean, I think the way that you could achieve that is by vote of the board to put a cap on how long the current exemption is gonna last, because you just haven't prescribed that yet.
that's my question.
And then you could, at the end of that period of time, whatever y'all determine in another year or whatever it might be, at that point, they would be required to apply directly to the city. As I understand the way it happened before, there was applications made to the county, and the county said, well, the city is the authority now that you grant these, exemptions. And so therefore it was just kind of one of those things that was unique to a brand new city. And so they were receiving the requests for the exemptions as they typically would have been before the city was incorporated, but because of the new city, they just sort of passed them on to us. Does that constitute proper application to the city?
Just a blanket approval.
Right, I don't know. I mean, it's because it's not every day there's a brand new city where something like that happens. Did we strictly receive individual applications to the city? No, I don't think we did. I think they went to the county, and the county received their applications and directed them our way.
You receive the spreadsheet.
Right.
Like that.
I mean, right, that's probably the more accurate way of saying it, but I mean, the county had separate applications for each item that's on the spreadsheet. At least that's what my understanding. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think what would be appropriate is if you were to determine, a time limit that you could prescribe for the exemptions, and at the end of that time limit, require everybody to reapply. Or we could seek an opinion on whether or not we can do that.
Well,
Okay, so how would we go about today, Mr. Scanlon, on presenting action for a vote to prescribe this time limit on those that we have already considered? How would that be presented?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you could slice that onion. I mean, if you want to take everything that you've granted that has not been prescribed a time limit for, and you want to apply a time limit now at the end of the fiscal year, or, then I think you could do it that way. You could take them, one at a time. You could examine them further, come back next month if there's a reason that you would discern that one person would get a longer time frame than another. I mean, I think there's a couple of different ways to do it, but where I think you've got the opportunity is that the board has not prescribed a time limit on it yet. And the statute clearly says that you got the discretion to prescribe a time limit. Ideally, I guess that would be done when somebody's making an application for a tax exemption, but again, because of this unique actual situation.
And this is only related to Freeport, not industrial, because we did a continuation in what the county did on industrial.
That's true, but if I understand it right, that you're saying the county didn't have a time limit prescribed on it. Is that
On
right?
the industrial, they did.
They did on industrial. Okay.
They do industrial.
Okay, so, all right, so Freeport then, that would be just Freeport.
And, and the industrial, it's 170 something thousand, the big picture, that's still a lot of money, but, they're concerned with these Freeport. That's where obviously the majority of the money is, and we certainly don't want it to be open-ended. I think we need to get our arms around this.
And I think it's capped at 10 years under the statute, isn't it?
Only the new enterprise and expansion of the enterprise is capped at 10 years. You can grant them for 1 year at a time, up to 10 years, but they can't get more than 10 years. But the Freeport, it doesn't specify that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it doesn't have an end cap.
So would it be reasonable to say to the end of this fiscal year, and at the end of this fiscal year, the Freeport warehouses apply the application?
So you're saying the tax exemption would apply for the 24? Yeah, I'm putting myself, I want to be business friendly, and I'm putting myself in those people's shoes.
That they would apply, so then it would come before the board and we would determine.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I'm running the business budget, looking at P&L and so forth, all of a sudden you say, well, like, you may have to pay me $250,000 this year that I hadn't budgeted for. That's tough.
Right, yeah.
But if they know this year could be the last year and they got to come reapply
And then
to get it
start
next
those
year.
Conversations about what the exemption would look like. going forward.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable and business friendly.
And for us to provide.
Well,
notice.
let me interject here on the time frame on the county, because they apply, any millage that we initiate. They go through their process and it has to be approved, I believe, by October 1. Although we get our billing for tax notices and it's not payable until the next year. So if we start making changes to any entity, I think they have to have it, or they prefer to have it no later than around June 1st.
Usually it's.
I could be wrong, but based on when we're incorporating, we had to kind of learn the time frame. So we're kind of rushed if we were to do any action that would trigger a millage increase for anyone before the 25 notices go out.
And they have to finalize their tax bills around that time.
Right. That's the proper terminology.
Well,
So,
I think what Ms. Bates and I were talking about is it wouldn't affect the 24 taxes. Most of these businesses, I think, operate on a calendar year basis. So their operating year ends the end of this calendar year. I would say the 24 taxes, they would still be exempt. Effective January, February, they would have to come in and reapply for 25 in order to be considered for 25 exemption. Is that what you're thinking as well?
Just
Okay.
to give them time.
Exactly. Do you understand that, Ms. Williams?
I do, but is it not accurate that, for example, when I received my parcel notice later this year, I'm technically paying 2025?
No, you're paying 24s. Pay taxes in arrears.
Okay, all right. My mistake, sorry. Okay, got it.
And I don't think you're talking about an increase in millage. I just think you're talking about the expiration of a tax exemption. And
That's all I'm talking
and the
about.
Freeport tax exemption is on personal property. It's not, a millage on advertisable. I mean, it's personal property that meets one of 3 criteria of the statute that Zach talked about, that's not, that's moving through or being stored in Mississippi. So, but I don't think it's not, you're going to levy your millage irrespective of what you do on these tax exemptions. I don't think you're increasing it. Obviously you've got the right to increase millage if you want to across the board, but I don't think that's not what you're talking about here.
No.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry.
All right, so you want to make a motion?
Well, do y'all want to consider it more, or you think it's premature? Or I think I'm comfortable with doing what we just talked about.
I agree with that, and the suggestion also that Ms. Bates made to roll it into next year's consideration for them coming forward.
Well, I think, just make sure, I guess I understand it. We're not affecting the tax exemption for anybody for this year. What's in place now for 23 will remain in place for 24. Effective January 1, they would have to come in and we don't know about the Freeport warehouse. They would have to come in and reapply. And I'm assuming they would have to do that by March, because we'd have to give them an answer by May or June. And that would affect the 2025 taxes going forward.
And that's only this list of the 5 or 6 plus the one you called.
Yeah, 7 or 8.
Sanho or Hunter Engineering.
Yeah, that's right. Those two. It's about 8 or 9 of them all total.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right, so this list that's on page 238 of the materials.
237. Well, it's 238 as well. I'm sorry.
238.
Yeah, 238.
238 plus
Plus Hunter and San Juan.
Motion's been made. Is it clearly articulated enough for us?
The deadline for them to come in and apply is what I need.
I would say then in February. Because the tax assessor
Yeah.
probably does need to know about what May.
Yeah, they start working on it pretty hard in May.
So let's make a March 1 deadline.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Cannon, Hunter and San Juan, we approved them last year for 1 year. So that, let's see, that is not valid for this year then, I don't guess.
That had the 1 year, limit on it. when-
They're not really considered on this list. It's only this list on page 238.
That's what I'm thinking.
So they need to come in and apply
They would,
soon.
they follow the same criteria requirement, but they're not really on this list per se. Theirs would have already been expired.
And the two industrial exemptions y'all approved, Dubuque, the cookie company, Curling, and then I believe the other one was, something warehouse. They have recently contacted me, so I've got to get back with them. And I'm gonna tell them to come in and apply, follow our process, to go for the board. Westlake was the other one.
All right, so is the motion articulated enough as made by Mr. Slade? You guys understand what he wants? All right, is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Bates, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now, while we're on the topic of fees and taxes that businesses pay in the city, Mr. Ma, I want to go to 9B to help me understand 9B. As I appreciate it, so far this year, $12,536 have been paid in privilege licenses. And you've attached some spreadsheets. Let's go to page 246. 246, I see Cardinal Health, $1,840.
Yes, sir.
That's what they pay.
Yeah, there's
Okay. And then if I go to page 249, Levi Strauss has paid $4,564.
Okay, so, okay, that warrants a little discussion. 1840, so both of those are based off of their retail inventory amount. The maximum that we can charge is 1840. Obviously Levi's is much higher than that. They had to catch up. They had not filed. They were one of the ones. So they basically paid 2 fees plus some late fees. That's why theirs is so much higher for this year. Going forward, if they file timely, it'll be like Cardinal Health, it'll be 1840.
Okay, so Cardinal Health paid 1840, and that's what Levi would pay if they were timed. All right, those are the questions that I had about those reports. Anybody else want to have questions or comments about 9B, and then I'm going to go back to 9.
What do you have outstanding now? I haven't paid it.
I've got to relook. We have some of those, it's around 100. But some of those, I've talked to a good bit of them. Some of them I've got to relook at, to verify, one, they're still in the city, tracking some down, stuff like that. A lot of them have came in and they filed or they've talked to me about filing. I mean, I'm trying to be, I want to be as.
After they received the nasty letters, they were told to get in touch with us. A good bit of them did get in touch with us, or came in and filed. This is kind of the last remnants of that list that we're just making sure before we proceed with next steps, that it's correct.
I do want to note, this isn't really related to that. My page numbers are not the same as y'all.
Okay.
That's why if y'all say a page number, I can't find it because mine has less pages in there. So it's throwing it off.
I've got the page numbers in front of me that you're referencing, so I'm just kind of whispering into his ear so he can bring it up.
Well, it's taking me a little bit.
All right, let's go to 9A, Ms. Kelly.
I have a question there.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Scott, a couple of months back, I asked about asking Department of Revenue for clarification on what happens now after someone may have discovered that revenue did not come to the city that was supposed to. Do you have any response from them yet?
I don't. I'll reach out to them and be like, I'm in contact with Sierra Hill or something similar to that. I'll send her an email tomorrow morning.
Okay, I'd like a follow-up on that if we could get that in email, please.
Yes, ma'am.
And we did send our list to MDOR last month, which they, now Scott is sending monthly privilege license updates to MDOR. So they know each month if we have a new business coming in that they need to capture.
All right,
Okay.
anything else on 9B? Ms. Kellum, 9A.
Yes, sir. I'll be brief. I've been filing quarterly reports, obviously, for the first quarter of the year for MDOR, IRS, NDS, and our legislative reports related to the police department, capital projects, funds. Bank reconciliations are going much smoothly, or much more smooth. We were able to do that in about 2 days this time around. So, light at the end of the tunnel, that things are going well with our software system. We've been prepping claims for this claims docket. I just got the amended claims docket today. We are working on fixed assets. We're going to have a large amount of equipment once we make the requisition for the dispatch equipment that was on the claims docket tonight. We have received all equipment, and so once we pay it, it'll everything will be updated and added into the fixed asset system. Human resources and payroll. I've been working on a comp time policy with Tom Butler. Just day-to-day activities with payroll and updating folks and making sure all of their supplemental benefits and whatnot are added. Let's see, we are going to implement performance evaluations in May. That was another reminder that I had for you guys ahead of budget season. We are about to start budget season for FY25 beginning in May. The last thing I will mention is that we're also working on a food truck ordinance draft to bring before y'all in May that is a standalone food truck ordinance. And that's all I have.
Any questions or comments to Ms. Kellum? All right, let's go to item 9C. You guys see that we have a proposed compensatory time off policy for certain city employees. This comp time policy was prepared by our employment lawyers along with input from Ms. Kellum. It would apply to our department heads only: Chief Hale, Assistant Chief Slavin, Ms. Kellum, Mr. Buckner, Mr. Hall, and Ms. Gerlach, who are not entitled to be paid for overtime. And you can see almost all of those folks present here tonight. It is 5 minutes to 7. And so what we wanted to do was to put in place some procedure where we could compensate our folks who are having to be here working. And this is the best way to do it. This is the way that we can compensate them a little bit by giving them comp time that they can use. Instead of personal time off, they can accrue 1 hour for every 1 hour of comp that they work. They can earn up to 50 hours and they have to use all 50 hours within the calendar year. So it's a fair, equitable, and routine way to compensate our department heads who are not otherwise entitled to overtime. So any questions at all about that, perhaps we can answer. I would certainly recommend, we've got great people in this city. I would certainly recommend the adoption of this. I would ask for a motion to approve the comp time policy.
I have a question,
Yes, ma'am.
and I may have missed it looking over document. Did I read that the mayor would be the only person that would sign off on these?
That's correct. The policy says that I would have to approve a request for comp time.
And is this going to be the practice for only city-related functions? I know it sounds like a silly question, but only city activity, city business?
Yeah, this is for when they are working in their capacity as a city employee. That's what this would apply to.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion then for approval of the comp time policy?
Motion.
Mr. Taylor made the motion. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Powell seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. Ms. Kellum, thank you, and please pass along our thanks to Mr. Butler for getting that done. All right, Mr. Hall, item 10.
Good evening. Just a general update on a few things going on in building and P and Z. This month, we issued 29 permits. Total of those permits was $7,556. We currently have 116 permits open, not including sign permits. If I include those, it's 363. And we only had 25 inspections last month, but I see that ramping up this month already. So we've been a little bit busy. Any questions on?
Any questions? All right, item 10B, Mr. Hall.
All right, this is the Meadows, which is up on Stout Farm. The vast majority of this actually lies out in the county. There's a new subdivision being built. It's already gone before the county for approval, and in reviewing their packet and whatnot, we realized a portion of this was actually in city limits. So just to keep everything correct by our books and everybody else's book, we asked that it be brought forward for approval. What you're looking at is a private subdivision that will be a private road that is built and maintained by the homeowners. These lots average about 5 acres each. A couple of them are larger. And essentially what you see in the green is about 100 to 120 feet of the backyard of all the lots on the east side. And that's what lies within the city limits. So that's what we're seeking approval for this plat.
And it's already been approved by the county.
Already been approved by the county.
Any reason at all why we shouldn't approve?
None.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Hall about this? All right, is there a motion then to approve the Meadows preliminary plat? Move. Mr. Slade, Mr. Slade. Made the motion. I'm just tell when you get old. Mr. Slade made the motion. Second. Mr. Taylor seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's just kidding. No. All right, Mr. Hall, 10C.
10C, it is a development that was previously approved as 911 restoration. They saw property elsewhere, so the owners decided to do something different with the development. It is now currently called the Corner, but I understand that we'll probably rename this to Old Jackson at Church. It's approximately a 7,500 square foot building, will be brick all the way around. The intention of it is to be sort of a mixed retail use. They do have one entrance off Church and one off Old Jackson. Both of them are adequate distance from the intersection. That was discussed at P&Z as well.
P&Z approved it.
P&Z did approve the recommendation of it.
Any questions of Mr. Hall about the proposed corner site plan? All right, is there a motion then to approve the corner site plan?
Make a motion, Tom.
Mr. Powell made the motion. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Taylor seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, an item to add to tonight is the Gluckstadt Village project. Mr. Safety, I know is here. He's here because I asked that he be here, and I know he's interested in this. Let me give you my perspective on where we are with this, and Mr. Hall can fill in the blanks, and we can go from there. So, as I appreciated when the Gluckstadt Village, this particular building was brought to the city, it was brought to P&Z, and P&Z ultimately approved it. It was brought before this board, and this board ultimately approved it.
Correct.
Then, as I appreciated, construction began, and there were some discussions with our then host newly formed architectural review staff, who apparently made some suggestions or approval of some modifications to what both P&Z had approved and to what you guys had approved. The buildings were then constructed differently than they were approved. And there are some fairly significant areas in which they're different, correct?
Correct.
Can you illuminate us on just a few of those major differences?
The two buildings were shifted south by, I believe, about 22 feet to make room for a driveway across the north section that was not shown on the original site plan. The driveway that is constructed currently is not at the south end of the property as was approved. It's more towards the center of the south building. There are plans to construct the second one in approximately the same location as original site plan approved.
So some pretty significant alterations.
Correct.
All right, Mr. Safety, do you want to speak to these and why these were done this way, or do you have somebody you want to speak to that?
I can speak to it.
Yes, sir. Come up here,
Sure.
Mr. Safety.
The buildings weren't moved. The driveway that was represented on the original site plan was not correct. There's an existing curb cut off of Callahan Station Parkway that lined up across the street. And if we built the driveway as it was drawn, it was going to become a problem lining up the entrance because eventually that might be signal. So we matched the existing curb cuts of Callahan Station.
All right, let me stop you right here. Were the buildings moved 22 feet or not?
No.
Mr. Hall?
So these are the curb cuts that were already there.
Correct.
Let's talk about the location of the building. We're
Sure.
going to take these one at a time.
Sure.
Well, while Mr. Hall looks for that, and I want that question answered. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I received an email, and the email said, this is what was approved, and this is what was built. And it really had to do with the frontal elevation of the building, what the building looked like.
Correct.
And they were minor cosmetic changes, but they were changes nonetheless.
Yes.
Okay. And then in an effort to try to figure out why that was done the way in which it was done, as I appreciate it was because somebody at architectural review said you could do it that way and approve that, despite the fact that P&Z had approved it and this board had approved it. Do I have that right so far?
Yes, sir, that's right.
Okay. Now, we're talking about some cosmetic issues later. I wanted to get to, though, building location and driveways.
This is the original site plan as approved by the board on 5/10/22. If you notice, the south drive is all the way down here at the bottom of the building, and it lines up across the road with that drive. Those should be the curb cuts that are currently existing. There is no driveway at the top.
That was approved by P&Z and this board?
Correct.
Okay,
That is the approved site plan.
okay,
And this is also matches what we have on digital files.
okay. So what was built?
This was the latest plan that was submitted.
No, you're not, I'm just trying to see.
The driveway is now located mid-building and it lines up across the way with the other curb cut. And now we have a driveway across the top of the building. This is the existing drive, and there's an existing drive over here as well.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Hall. So here's the issues I see. We have some cosmetic issues that when they first came to me, I wasn't happy that they had been done because once this board approves it, that's the way it's supposed to be done. But I understood that somebody with some apparent authority for the city, our architectural review folks, basically blessed the cosmetic changes. And so that's not the process that's supposed to be followed. But I was going to, and would still recommend that the board approve those ex post facto cosmetic changes because somebody with the apparent authority of the city apparently directed that you do that. Okay? And so I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem though, and I suspect that these folks are gonna have a problem with these, what I believe to be major modifications in the site plan with what was built. So my question is, why were those changes made?
Yes, sir. And if you pull the approval, one of the requirements was to put access on the drive around to the north. When it was approved, it was required that we add that. It wasn't in the drawing, the original drawing, but there was a requirement to do that. And if you
That
look,
requirement is where? Is that a requirement?
In 2 minutes or a board?
I don't remember if it was P and Z or board, or one of the two.
Well, as I understand the process, a site plan is supposed to be submitted and that's what's approved. And there's not supposed to be any alterations from the site plan.
Yes, sir. The only problem is, if you look at this, this lines up and this lines up, the two drives, the two curb cut, this one was in the wrong place. The original architect put that in the wrong place. It actually was here. So the building's gonna get moved. They're built in the right place, but the driveway is represented incorrectly. Because if you look at them, they line up directly.
You understand the problem that you put Mr. Hall and his staff in, and you put us as a board in that, I mean, these folks consider this stuff very seriously. And so we have a whole nother board that considers this. And if things get changed afterward,
yes, sir.
Then, I start getting calls like I did at 8 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, we need a certificate of occupancy. Can you hurry it up and put it on the agenda? And just like Mr. Slade, I want to be business friendly. I don't want buildings built out here that don't have businesses in them. But at the same time, this board adopted policies. I'm supposed to enforce them. I've asked that man to enforce them. And now all of a sudden at 8 o'clock in the morning, he's the bad guy because he's not given a certificate of occupancy for a building that is not in conformance with what this board approved. So I got a problem. We have a problem as to what we're going to do about it.
Yes, sir. And, the building's been inspected at least 3 or 4 times. It's only at the end that we're notified that they're not right. So that's a bit of a challenge for us.
But here's the thing, Mr. Satie, you can't build a building not in compliance and then come up here and say, well, y'all didn't catch it, so now it's your fault.
No, it's not what I'm saying.
That's not the way it can be done.
I understand, but there has to be communication both ways, not at the last
There
minute.
need to be no communication. Once P and Z approves it, once this board approves it, that's the way it's supposed to be built.
Correct.
That's the process. There can't be any room or reason for ambiguity because that's how these problems come up.
Sure.
And it's my job to defend the process that this board adopted. And he calls me saying these things aren't built right, and I'm the one who got to deal with it. And so now we have a problem. And I'm not talking about the cosmetic problem because somebody under the guise of the city authority approved that. That's not the right process, but that's the way that I would advocate that the buildings be built from a cosmetic perspective. But we now have a real problem that this board's going to have to be faced with because you're asking for a certificate of occupancy. He can't give a certificate of occupancy because the building hasn't been built correctly. So thank you, Mr. Satie. Mr. Hall, in order to issue a certificate of occupancy, I recognize that there are things like water, sewer, electricity, is all that stuff hooked up?
They have power on site, but they do not have water or sewer at this time.
We have water.
As does not set meters.
They're out there. No, this week, you got a picture of it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So when were the water meters put in?
Which week? Last week.
Okay. We
They
have
told
sewer.
us that they were not installed.
I'm sorry?
Bear told us that they were not installed.
Okay. Well, we gotta have water, we gotta have sewer. And before you could issue a certificate of occupancy, this board is gonna have to approve some special exception because this building is not built to the site plan, right?
Correct.
Okay. So any questions or comments of Mr. Hall or Mr. Satie?
I guess my question is, when you realize that the architect put it in the wrong spot, what was the communication?
The buildings were already in place, like the foundations were poured. When we realized the curb cuts didn't line up to where the buildings were already there, the foundation was poured.
And the architecture committee that said it was okay, you have correspondence?
For the
They
exterior
said it's
changes,
okay?
yes. The
For the
exterior,
curve,
for the exterior changes, we didn't,
not for the curve.
I guess cosmetic changes, that didn't go back to P and Z. That was one person.
yes, sir. And kind of how that happened is, these buildings were approved first, and then we had the hotels that we took, and there were significant changes that were made to the exterior of those hotels. Everything matched, and in an effort to kind of keep a cohesive look, these were changed to match the hotels that were approved. And the hotels being two, one was approved completely, and the other was, I think, somewhat approved. I think there's a flood zone that has to be resolved. But the look of those two hotels, and then this would be completely different. That's why it was changed. I was agnostic to how they looked. I think they look good as designed. They look good as they are now. They're just two different looks. And that was the intent, was to make it look cohesive.
Question,
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Williams.
when did we approve the site plan?
May 10th, 2022.
You have to speak up.
May 10th, 2022.
May 10, 2022.
Who issued the construction permit? Does William know?
That, I believe, was issued by Mike McCollum, I believe. It was issued before I was here.
Jeff Williams.
Jeff Williamson may have reviewed it and all the construction documents.
Do we have a date?
Each all.
The approval is in the minutes.
What was the date that the construction?
Probably was Mike.
I don't have that.
Okay, we don't have a date at hand, Ms. Williams.
I'm pretty sure it was Mike, because I know he inspected the foundation.
Okay, I think that's a date that we need to know. I don't know if we have to make a decision tonight, but I will say, and I can't pull my notes out right now from that meeting in May 2022, but I remember reference to a north, the concrete being extended enough to, for a vehicle and or an emergency vehicle to get around that. I do remember that being said at some point in somebody's meeting, whether it was planning, zoning, or at our level. So I don't know how elaborate we talked about it, but I do remember that being driven home.
Is it in the
Now
minutes?
what?
Alderwoman Williams, the minutes say that the site plan was approved with no amendments. So it was just approval of the site plan and it was unanimous.
Site plan was approved with no amendments unanimously.
Okay, so that may have been at planning and zoning then. I do remember the north access being discussed. And I probably went to that planning and zoning meeting. I have to pull my notes again, but that won't change anything as to what's in our minutes, of course. It's just my physical notes. I think the construction permit date is important, and if anything is documented there.
I have a question on this. So, if you look at the building and everything the way it is there a reason you think P and Z would not approve? If the site plan had been drawn just like the building's built, do you think P and Z would approve today, or would you have a problem with it?
I don't. The only issue I have is it doesn't match the approved site plan.
But if the site plan had been as per the way it's been built, you think P and Z and you would be okay with it?
I believe so.
So going forward, how are we going to prevent this from happening?
I mean, we'll communicate better. We have changed architects and engineers, so we'll be a little bit more proactive. Right. Yeah, and it, unfortunately, the buildings didn't move. It was curb cuts. And I didn't want to create a problem down the road of this one being here and then it would take the traffic running into the bank's lot, and it just would have been a problem. And I probably should have communicated that better. Did y'all find about the North Drive?
I'm looking just at the P and Z minutes from the previous meeting before the Board of Aldermen meeting on May 5th, May 10th. And it says, motion second, we voted unanimously to recommend to the Board of Aldermen approval of the site plan with the recommendation that the petitioner make improvements to the drive-through lanes. I don't know if those improvements, if that's a reference.
That was it.
Okay. And then when it went in front of the Board of Aldermen, that was the provision that Ms. Kellen just read, which says approve the site plan by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So, you know, is that as approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission? The Planning and Zoning Commission said they were making the recommendations that those improvements would be made, so.
And I just remember it came up because I owned the property to the north in a different LLC, and they were concerned about encroaching on somebody else's property with my property. That's what I remember.
That's true. I remember that too.
All right, so I'm gonna call for a vote in a minute, but I want to really impress upon not just you, Mr. Safety. Unfortunately, you're the guy here.
I understand.
Being the example. But if you're out there and you're gonna build a building in this city and P and Z approves it and this board approves it, it has got to be built that way. If it's not built that way, or you want to make some changes, please come back to Mr. Hall, because this guy is in the middle of trying to enforce rules that this board has adopted that we have to apply, and he can't do it with these types of changes. It's not about where the building is or what the driveways look like. It's about trying to protect the integrity of the process. Sure. So it's equally applied to everybody who wants to build in this city, so that we can know what we're doing when we're trying to enforce the rules that the board sets. So next time, if it's approved by the P&Z, it's approved by this board, that's the way the building's got to be built. And if there's going to be some changes, please go to Mr. Hall and let's get prior approval, because I feel like this board getting ready to approve what you built.
I appreciate it.
But it would be nicer not to have this problem come up at 8 o'clock in the morning
Sure.
of this meeting. And the reason I wanted it tonight is I know there's some urgency.
We have tenants ready to.
And so these folks are going to approve it. That doesn't get you a certificate of occupancy though, until that man says you get one. Okay?
We're waiting on the board.
All right. So is there then a motion to, go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Do we have, any comments? I just thought about fire and what have you, and has Mr. Perry been involved in any of this? Is he available for any
About what?
comments? Dusty Perry or fire.
About fire.
Has he been involved in any inspections, or where's he at in his process on that?
Yes, I've been involved with William discussing it.
Any problems as you see it from your perspective?
Just got the latest set today. So I hadn't had a chance to review that latest set.
Ms. Williams, he has not yet had the opportunity to review the latest set of plans that were submitted today.
We received updated plans today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There's no need for him to have to take it back to P and Z. If they approve and recommend it to us, we have the authority, so there's really no need to have to take it back to P and Z. I don't think.
Allow me to make modifications to the drive, isn't that what you said?
It recommended improvements to the drive-through lanes.
The drive around.
But this, it says drive-through, and you do have a drive-through lane here at the south side of the building already. So did it reference, is that what they were referencing? Was
They're
it
talking
approved
about,
that?
they're talking about going around, and it was particularly for fire. I just remember because the discussion of property. Anyway.
Any questions or comments? Somebody want to make a motion to approve this building as constructed? I move. All right, Mr. Slay made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hall?
We still have not received a completed site plan, showing everything correctly. So if we may make it contingent upon reception of that.
Yeah, again, The building's been built and we don't have a final completed site plan. That's a real problem for me.
We were only asked to update it on Thursday, so we got as much as we could, and it's just a few
Mr.
items.
Satie, you were asked to have a complete site plan in 2022 when you went to P and Z.
I understand.
And when this board voted on it thereafter, this is not a newfound unfair requirement. This was asked of you months ago. So please do not try to say that this is anybody in this city's responsibility or fault. We have rules that are published. Anybody can go and find them. They're applicable to everybody who builds buildings in this city. All right, did I hear there is a motion and a second to approve the building as constructed, contingent upon final proper approval of a site plan?
Quick questions?
Mr. Taylor.
Has everything else been approved, in that development?
The village.
Only these three buildings have really been brought forward and approved.
Well, the hotel too, the Spring Hill is approved.
That one involves some floodway.
So the one at floodway, Spring Hill didn't have any floodway. It's above the flood zone.
But if I remember correctly, part of that parking lot was in the floodway and required building of theirs in a floodway. So, but I'll have to go back and double check. But Madison Motor Works was also approved. But there are other buildings that are not approved at this time.
I would just hold his feet to the fire. I mean, I wouldn't give an inch or anything else.
Can I ask for an amendment to the motion also?
Yes, ma'am. Yours will be another motion. Go ahead. You make your motion.
Oh, me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that in the future, any site plan for like that village has to, come before consideration with scrutiny. I don't know what the proper word would be on that, just that we have the feet to the fire, as Mr. Taylor said, on any building, any structure, any of that proposed development.
Ms. Williams, what it sounds like to me you're saying is we're gonna make darn sure he complies with our rules that we've already adopted. That's
Well,
pretty much.
extra scrutiny, if that's a motion that we can make,
Well, I don't think you have to make that motion because that's the policy that you guys already adopted, that Mr. Hall is charged with enforcing. And I am in charge with making sure it gets enforced. And I can assure you it's gonna get enforced. That's why we're here tonight. And so you've already approved and told us the way in which we're supposed to do this. And, but I will assure you this much, we will look a lot more closely at this going forward. I can assure you of that.
You know, you can always ask the clerk reflect the comment in the minutes before the motion.
Absolutely, and I don't mean to minimize Ms. Williams's concern or comment, but she doesn't have to get a motion passed to tell us to enforce the rules that she's already adopted. The board's already adopted. And so we're gonna do it. We're gonna enforce the rules. And that's what we're trying to do in this particular instance, was enforce the rules. But, you know, the fact that the building wasn't built as you guys approved it, we're now in a situation of either approving it, really don't want to approve it, or not approving it, and we've got an empty building over here. That's ridiculous. We would never do that. You guys would never do that. And so, and that's not the point of having these rules and these procedures that were adopted. But they got to be built right the next time. And I can tell you, as you can tell from me and the board, they're not going to be approved the next time.
That's fair.
So, all right, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor of approving as constructed, contingent upon a final proper site plan submitted to Mr. Hall. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you, Mr. Satie, and I recognize you've been made the example today, and it's not personal. And I want everybody who's paying attention and to listen out there. The board spends a lot of time going over these things. They adopt the rules and regulations. This gentleman struggles with trying to approve because he's not provided the right information. It's got to stop. It's not rocket science to get these things done correctly. Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Buckner.
Good evening. Just for us, coming up first is, we have some paving in Red Oak we'd like to do. This kind of coincides with B as well, but we can go ahead with paving. In Red Oak, we are trying to pave 5 roads. It'll be a total of $452,622. These are the main roads going through the subdivision, which have the most traffic and have the most wear and tear on them at the time. We currently are out there almost every week patching potholes on Flanders Road. It's definitely one that needs to be paved. And so we're just asking for the board's approval to go ahead with the estimates that have been provided to get these streets back.
And before we call for a vote, we've got some county funds.
Correct.
That we will use to offset the cost. That will be 11B.
Yes, sir.
The net cost to the city is $115,622.
Correct.
Okay. But certainly the streets in Red Oak need to be paved. And this is certainly warranted. Any questions about approving the paving of these streets in Red Oak? All right, is there a motion then for approval of the paving of the streets in Red Oak?
Make that motion, sir.
All right, Mr. Powell made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Taylor seconded. All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? All right, now, item 11B, the county. I don't know if you guys pay attention to the way the county sends in every one of its supervisor districts certain monies for paving the streets. They have historically dispersed $5 million with $1 million for each supervisor's district. I went to the board and made a plea for paving and for other road construction projects. And at that meeting, they actually approved over $6 million because one of the supervisors in the northern part of the county fought hard for his constituents. And not only got $1 million for his supervisor district, but got $2 million for his supervisor district. We have been allocated out of $1 million, $337. I'm sorry, how much?
$337,000.
$337,000 out of the $1 million for streets that fall within the city of Gluckstadt. Let that sink in. Okay, $337,000 from our supervisor district. But that is what the county has allocated to us. I would like for your approval of the MOU to allow us to accept that $337,000.
Certainly want to approve it unless we want to turn. I move.
Mr. Slade made the motion. Is there a second? Mr. Spade seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
All right,
11C.
let's see. We've had a couple of requests and I'm asking the board to discuss whether or not they would like to do an engineered traffic study along Gluckstadt Road from Red Oak subdivision going west to the city limits. There's been discussion of speed limit tickets and everything, and everybody wants to be able to drive 5 miles an hour fast.
State statute requires you to have an engineering study before you increase the speed limit.
So the question is whether or not we ought to raise the speed limit on Gluckstadt Road from Red Oak subdivision west to essentially Bozeman, the Bozeman Road intersection. In order for us to do that, we have to get an engineered traffic study done. You know what that's gonna cost?
I do not know. I apologize, I do not.
About $2,000.
About $2,000.
Is that the only reason? It's just hopefully increase the speed limit by 5 miles an hour?
What do we
About
do?
a half a mile?
You can't do it under state statute. You can't change speed limit without a traffic study.
Yeah, but
And what they do is go off to 85 85 or 85th percentile of the speed that's traveled during the study. So, if everybody's doing 35 miles an hour through there, it could go 35. I highly doubt it could go to 55. The way some of these tickets.
Mr. Ingles, would you do this study?
Yes, sir, we can handle that for you. And it may not change at all because.
You have familiarity with these studies?
Yes, sir.
Please come on.
Yeah.
You have familiarity with doing these studies?
It's just spot speed studies. We go out and take radar during off-peak times, you know, where the traffic's.
Given what you know about what you've done in the past and what you know about Gluckstadt Road, what are we talking about?
As far as the speed limit, well, 2 years ago, I would probably tell you that it could have been increased. But
what's the likelihood that we're going to be able to increase it 5 miles an hour?
I would say probably not very much. So just
less than
personally during my commute.
Less than 50% likelihood.
I would say that.
That's 5 miles.
I'd probably say that's, yes.
What's the speed limit now?
It's 35.
You don't know?
I'd say that they do. Chief Held does such a good job enforcing the speed limit. I don't think.
Yeah, they're already driving slower.
So to get the study, the likelihood of us even being able to increase it to 40 miles an hour is less than 50%.
I would think so, but they may have a better understanding of what the speed limit, or what the speeds currently are.
Well, 60 wouldn't touch most people.
Most of our average tickets, Mayor and Board, are at least 15 and over.
Okay, well, in that case, you may
You know, we're talking about a half a mile. It's not like it's several miles here. It's a very short distance.
It's a couple seconds of your daily commute.
That's normally slow because the traffic is slow, right?
Guys, what you want to do? Y'all want to commission this study?
No, I don't.
I do not know.
Is there, all right, Mr. Ingles, thank you, sir. Sure. Is there a motion then to commission this traffic study? All right, that matter dies for lack of a motion. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank y'all.
All right, Chief Hale.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. We're not paving any roads, so that's good. And we do a traffic study every day. And we feel as though it's where it needs to be.
All right, 12A.
Yes, well, yeah, general update, Mayor, we have, since the last board meeting, we've done 398 tickets. We made 21 arrests. One of those arrests was George Zabros. I don't know if you're familiar with that. He's one of our Ben Nelson golf guys. Through the hard work of Lieutenant Tucker, who's been working on this case for a long time now, we were able to get our second suspect. So, and he bonded out. We've still got a couple more we're working on, and I have no doubt that with the good work of our investigators, we'll get them. We worked 22 accidents since then. Of those 21 arrests were 15 misdemeanors, 6 felonies, and one of them was a DUI. We recovered 9 guns, 1 stolen gun, and one of the arrests was a convicted felon. We served 73 warrants since we started doing that. I'm going to keep y'all updated. And I think it was December when we started. And the new building, of course, is coming along good. We went and toured it today with the Motorola people. We started the Motorola Solutions workforce class today, where we're getting ready to when we put our dispatch into the building. So we're excited about that. That's all I have for the update.
Any questions of Chief Hale? Chief, I want to commend you guys again for doing just a first-class job. You guys might be surprised to know that every now and then we get a complaint from somebody who's not happy with our police. And most of the time, Chief Hale gets it, and I get to really.
I like it when they call you.
Yeah, I get to really belligerent ones. Every time I get one, I call Chief Hale and say, "This is very serious. We're going to look into this." Every single time, he's immediately responsive to me. He doesn't just tell me what's going on or what the history of the issue has been, he's oftentimes got video footage to prove what did or did not happen. All of our guys, I believe, are carrying themselves and operating with dignity and respect for people. I have personally witnessed in our traffic court, people who come in here in orange jumpsuits and shackles be treated with every ounce of respect they're entitled to. So, good work. It's a thankless job. I know it sometimes. But thank you for what you do, and thanks all you guys for.
I got 19 other guys that helped me deal with it, so it's all in there. Thank you. Can I add one more thing real quick?
Yes, sir.
May the 3rd, we're having the 2nd annual stat scramble. We're gonna have a golf team. They're gonna have a golf team. There's four player teams, includes a tee sponsor for $600. It goes, what's that, Madison Business Alliance, does that. It goes to raise funds to help us with equipment. And this year we're trying to get equipment for our gym.
And if you've seen some of our guys that need work out.
So yeah, yes, last year we were able to get a K9 with that, with most of the money by that, and everybody had a good time. So if anybody's interested in it, I got this right here. You can come out. It's on a Friday, May the 3rd, and we'll have a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you, Chief. All right, Let's go to 12B. You want to buy furniture for the new police department to the tune of $135,760, 58 cents.
I do.
We have $150,000 budgeted.
Yes, sir.
So it's always good when we come in under budget. All of this is on state contract.
Yes, sir.
And this will get everything but dispatch, correct?
Yes, sir. And luckily, some of that money that we were able to save on this and hopefully some other stuff we're going to put towards getting the dispatch furniture, which I think is around $40,000.
Awesome. Great. All right. Any questions of Chief Hale about this request to approve the furniture purchase for the police department?
I have a question. Where are you gonna put all this that starts coming in?
Do you have a barn?
Well, I got some money.
Seriously, Miss Williams, it takes a while. Once we get it approved and get the purchase orders done and they get it, and then, it's going to take a little while. We should be about the time we get the building is when we'll actually, and I think if not, we'll have them stored at their place until we're able to get it.
Okay.
All right.
But yeah, I've got to check.
All right. Is there a motion then to approve the proposed furniture purchase? Mr. Slade made the motion. Is there a second? Ms. Bates seconded. All in favor? All right. Any opposed? All right. Great work. Item 12C, Chief Hale.
That is I did not have much to do with this as Carrie did and other people. That's the consideration of approval of the continuity of operations plan, which is short for COOP, which I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. That's basically what we need to have in place when the city, say we have a natural disaster or emergency, tornado or something like that. The city still needs to be able to run and get services to the citizens. So basically what this is something we put in place to outline going forward what we'll do with the mayor mostly in charge of that, and what the other department heads and all that'll do. So we wish to adopt it.
Okay, and any questions of Chief Hale about this continuity of operations plan as proposed?
This is only in the event of declaring a disaster, or just do you get any declared emergency?
That's all right.
Declared disaster.
No, it would be like, we have trains that come through here. We have 18-wheelers that come through here hauling hazardous materials. Anything like that. Say, last year, I believe we had one of the factories, Vertex, had an incident, which luckily didn't end up being bad, but we have schools all in close proximity. So it could be several things, natural disaster, tornadoes, chemical spills, those kind of things. Not really anything minor. Would we need to deal with that?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the first sentence of the promulgation statement. Very first sentence of what you gave us. Continuity of operations ensures the continuation of government and the performance of essential functions during and after a disaster or other disruption to normal government function.
Yes,
So if it meets that
yes, sir.
criteria, that's what we
Yes.
invoke this.
Yes, it helps us when if something happens to one of our municipal buildings. You know, it's outlined in there what we'll do moving forward and how we'll go about it.
I just have one more thing piece to add. This also is necessary for grant funding to do disaster preparedness. So this is a good thing to adopt.
Okay, any other questions about this proposed continuity of operations plan? All right, is there a motion then for approval of it?
Motion.
Ms. Bates made the motion, is there a second? Second. Mr. Powell seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Chief Hale, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for us all.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, anybody sign up for public comment?
Yes, sir.
All right, at this time, I believe we need to enter into closed session to determine the need for executive session. Is there a motion in that regard? Mr. Slade made the motion. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Taylor seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're now in closed session. Thank you all for coming tonight.